All yours.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to think that so many people would give time out of their evening. It's very humbling, and I want to make this worth your while. And I would like for it to be meaningful to you, to be as much of a conversation as possible. So I look forward to the questions and answers. I think that's where things will really happen. And it's a little bit awkward to talk to coaches and to be just speaking one way. It doesn't make any sense, right? So let's do this as much as a dialogue as we can. And we face challenges of language, we face challenges of technology, and those are just the beginning of the challenges we face when we're dealing with matters of transformation, which is what we are all interested in. But I just have to say, you couldn't know how happy I am to be with you because you don't know me very well. So I want to tell you a few things to let you know. Partly, you need to know me. You probably know this from your training, but the dimension that the boundaries that you have for trusting someone is the boundaries you have for being able to receive from them, to hear them, and to maybe apply the things that they would say. So I thought when I was thinking about this, what business do I have? It's a privilege, but why would I find myself here? And in my biography that you have, I wrote the road of life, you just do not know where it's going to take you. And I don't even know when I first even knew anything about the country of Turkey, but my wife's father, 50 years ago, was in the US military. He was a Navy submarine commander. And the United States sold a submarine to Turkey, the first submarine in Turkey. It's in the Koç Museum now. That's the submarine that my father-in-law was commander of. And he fell in love with Turks and Turkey back in 1970. And so when he retired to Turkey for maybe 10 years. They spent time. I think it was mostly about the food and the people. They loved it very much. And that was the first time I visited Turkey back in the early 1990s. When I was on the board of directors of an NGO that was called alongside to help in the 1999 earthquake, that, Izmit, Goljuk, the really disastrous earthquake. And we were involved in getting tents and food and supplies and helping out. And that was my first biggest exposure to the country and the people, and fell in love with it. And that work continued, and I ended up being assigned that part of the world by my board. And during that time, I would visit. I would always go see something historical that I love, to study history. And one time I took my daughter with me on a trip. She was in high school. She fell in love with Turkey. And then she studied Turkish. She did an exchange with a school in Antalya when she was in high school. And then she came in the summer, and in college, she came a couple of times and studied Turkish at Boğaziçi just because she loved it. Anyway, she married someone that lives in Turkey. He's from Spain, but he grew up in Turkey. And they keep my grandkids in Turkey. And so that's why Turkey's extra important to me. So a few years ago, I got a strategy for being able to visit my grandchildren, and I started a small business. My work over the years has been with leaders and leadership development. So I decided to open a liaison office in Turkey because I like Turkey and I want to be helpful, but also to see my grandchildren. Maybe 2015 was not a great year for an American to start a business in Turkey. There's been a lot of excitement since then, but I've enjoyed it. So I don't know all the reasons, and we'll never know all the reasons we end up someplace. But I don't think it's an accident that we do end up in rooms together, on Zooms together. When I was in university, when I was in graduate school, I was in graduate school for some of the same reasons I imagine that you pursued certification as coaching. My life had been impacted by a mentor, someone who knew a lot about business, but he knew a lot about developing younger leaders, and he invested himself in me. And we didn't call it coaching back then. You know, coaching is a relatively new concept. Some of the first formal coaching and some of the training began maybe 30 years ago. This was before I was ever, after I was already out of school and for my career. But my career took a path that basically involved coaching younger leaders. It's become one of my passions to work with leaders and leadership teams. And this fellow that mentored me, he was the general manager of a medium-sized computer electronics company that was just starting up called Intel. So he was very competent, and I learned so much from him. So I went to business school to try to learn some of to be like him. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to have the impact on lives like he had on mine. And I found out in business school, that's not where you learn those things. And I learned less in business school than I learned from him. And slowly over the years, I realized that the things that really transform us are truth that we get from another person. That truth is personal. And even when we get something out of a book that helps us, or a seminar or a training, it really comes through another person. There's no ideas that are separate from people. So when you're a coach and you're encouraging someone and you're helping them develop, what you give to them is you don't give them ideas only. You don't give them something that they have to do on their own. There's something that comes from your very being to them and enables them to actually put that into practice. So that's my goal today. I have one concept, one idea that I want to communicate with you and encourage you in. I'll talk about it in different ways to try to make it understandable. And it's something you already know. We always need to be suspicious when somebody tells us something that we've never heard of. So this will not be new to you. Hopefully it will be helpful and applicable in your life. And so the concept I want to get through to you is that what I just said, the truth and the impact that we receive, the benefits that we receive always come through a person. And so my encouragement to us, my challenge to us is to become the kind of people that we're teaching about, to give the truths from authenticity in our own lives, to be the message. There's a 1960 radical that talked about, or an author that talks about the medium is the message. And we are the medium and we become the message. But it's more than that. If we only tell truths, we're like a journalist stepping away from the scene and observing what's going on. And we may observe accurately or we may not. But when we write our article and we send it into the newspaper, or on however we are a journalist, we're only telling what we're seeing. But being a coach, being someone who's invested in seeing lives change is different than being a journalist. It's not just telling facts. It's entering into that scene with the people and becoming part of it with them and imparting the truth that we have. And sometimes that will be very obvious. But I think if you process this a little bit, you will remember that there are things that you learned from people that you didn't know you were learning. But just being around them, you learned how they dealt with stress, maybe positive or negatively, but you saw how they handled their relationships with people. You saw how you even learned to speak your native language this way. You were just around people and you learned from them. That's how we learn most of the things. It comes through people that we're around. So we can be very intentional in our own development, not so that we will make more money, not so that we will be smarter, not so that people will respect us. Some of those are okay things. But we want to become the message that we give for the sake of those we're giving it to. It really is an act of love for us to develop our own capacity, because that enables us to serve others better. So that was a lot. You'll find, I don't want to go too fast. As if there's any responses, does that make sense? Esra, are we okay with these things? Or Desiree?
Desire, sence hız iyi mi? Yani çeviri için herhangi bir değişiklik yapmalı mıyız?
Okay. All right. Okay. Then two final disclaimers. I'm not a certified coach. As I just said, coaching didn't exist when I was preparing and entering my career that I sort of found my way through. But I always had a passion for leaders and developing leaders. So in many ways, I'm not going to be able to say, I'm not going to be able to give things to you. I'm going to maybe give you an understanding, but you have a toolbox that's much larger and better equipped than mine. So I'm not a certified coach, but I am, I'm an advocate for you all. And I'm international president of Esra's fan club because of what she does. So. But one other disclaimer, I've noticed in one of the biographies that probably was pulled from somewhere, it was mentioned that I had a PhD. I want to clarify that because this will probably be published somewhere else. I do not have a PhD. I do have a doctorate. It's a research doctorate of another. It has different letters. That's okay. It's not important. And we don't need to discuss that now. If you want to know more, we can talk later. But I just wanted to clear that up. I do not have a PhD. And if I had it to do over again, I would not have a doctorate. I'm not sure it was all that helpful, but it was a lot of work and it built character. So with those aside, that introduction, I would like to, I would like to begin by giving you a picture, a story, perhaps playing off of the concept that Esra introduced to us about a tree and its roots. I'm going to share my screen and show you a picture of a tree. Let's see, can I do this? Can I share a screen? I'm not seeing if I can do it. The button is not there anymore. Let me see if I can find it. I'm not going to take too long to do this. It was there earlier.
You can maybe try it again because you're a co-host now. So maybe you will see. Share screen.
No, it's not showing up on I'm using a iPad, so maybe it's other command.
ALT, Jayson.
That's okay.
Evet, verildi co-host aynı zamanda.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. I always have backup. I'll show you what I was going to show you. It won't be as beautiful. But I don't know. Let's see if you can see that. Maybe not. Can you see that? It's a large tree in front of my house. It's probably 15 meters tall. It's an oak tree, and it's over 150 years old. And that oak tree came from a seed just like this. In fact, this acorn came from that tree. And hold on, I messed up my. When I was trying to do that, all of my notes got messed up. So this seed gets put into the ground, and this is very much like the truth that we offer someone else. It goes into the soil, the ground of their soul. By the way, you will have to pardon me. I grew up on a farm, and the things I understand best are about plants. And so the seed goes into the earth like truth goes into our inner being. And it's to put a seed, as a farmer puts a seed in the ground, it's really a quite risky thing. They have the seed, but then they have to put it in the ground. It has to disappear, be covered up. It's like it's lost, it's died, it's gone, you can't see it. But as we know, a miracle occurs. Something happens in the germinating, in the biology of that seed, and it begins to grow, and it puts up a small sprout. And it looks small, it looks weak, but we know that those sprouts are very strong because they can push rocks out of the way. And when it emerges, it looks very vulnerable, very weak. Maybe it's very light green. But that's what happens with truth. When we give something to someone, we entrust it to them. We put it in, and really we can't do a lot else with it. We have to put it inside them. They have to receive it. And if they do, and if the truth is true, if the things we've said are true, they will begin to sprout and grow. And that growth process is what we're talking about. How does that take place in the most healthy way with the most healthy understanding? Well, if you think of the plant growing, it's small, and we begin to celebrate when we see something growing in someone. But it's not finished. It is a maturing plant. And it may be beautiful as a small plant or tree. It may be even more beautiful when it begins to put on leaves. And we love to sit and look at nature and see the leaves outside my window. I have several plants. It's so beautiful. It's so nourishing to my soul. But that's not the ultimate purpose that plant has for existing. Well, eventually it will put on blooms, flowers. That's even more beautiful sometimes for a plant. And we enjoy that, and we love sometimes the smell of that. But that's not the ultimate purpose of it's another stage in the maturing of that plant. Eventually it grows, and it flourishes, and it begins to put fruit on of some kind. For an oak tree, it's one of these. Whatever kind of tree, it has a fruit that looks different. And when it comes time for these to fall off or to be harvested, the tree is not always so beautiful as it was maybe when the leaves were fresh or the blossoms were the clearest. And this is the way sometimes truth works in our own lives. As we go in maturing and going toward growing up in truth, sometimes it gets a little messy, doesn't it? As we really apply it to our lives. But the ultimate purpose of that seed and that tree is really to produce fruit, to reproduce itself. And it's a necessary phase for that beautiful tree to again produce things that are not really that beautiful, but are very necessary. And I would say that the ultimate purpose of that tree is not even to produce the seeds, but to produce seeds that reproduce themselves. And that's what we want. And the things that we give to others that will make their lives better, more functional, that will make them more productive and happier people, we give that to them not to prove that we're good coaches, and we don't give it to them just so their lives will be better. Ultimately, we're investing in them because an investment in them is an investment in everybody who knows them, in their families, in their neighborhoods, in the world in which we live in, which, as we know today, could stand some transformation. So this concept of maturity is, there's a Greek word, and you don't necessarily care about Greek words, but there's a Greek word that gets translated into English. It gets translated and used in words like telescope. Like a telescope scope means to see, and tele is the Greek word for far away. A telescope lets you see things that are far away. But this word tele, or you may have heard it, and if you've trained in psychology, you may have heard it used in words like teleological or teleos, which basically means things that are far off capture our attention. We are teleological beings. We see what's ahead, and we begin to arrange our lives in accordance with that, and plan or worry or think about the future. That's just how we're made. So telos is the Greek word. This is your Greek lesson for the day, your vocabulary lesson for the day. It's a great concept, and it's translated often as the word mature. And it often gets translated as the word perfect, because when something is mature, the assumption is it's perfect, it's perfected, it's complete. And there's a trap there for us to think that what we're doing in our coaching and in also seeing after our own lives is that we're going toward perfection. And it's quite a trap. We become those who perform and who put on mask, a facade, to appear to be what we believe others would see as perfect. It's very dangerous, and it's in the end, it will restrict your ability to coach well, because our work with other people is about their growth and their continual growth. And the way that we ensure their growth is that we keep growing ourselves, not present ourselves as the expert that is perfect, but as people that are on a journey, maybe a few steps in front of them, that can impart the things that we know and that are rooted in us to them. And so that's back to the original proposition I make, that all truth, all good things that come into our lives come through other people. And as we become those who mature, we help others mature. So I would like to, this is one of the first things I would like to encourage you to grasp, that I'm not trying to become perfect, and I'm not trying to help people become perfect. I'm not trying to get the end of things done. I'm equipping them for the journey. So it's maturing, constant, ongoing, rather than finished process, mature. So that tree that I showed you a picture of, you would say it's mature. It's 150 years old, but it's still maturing. It's still growing. It's still becoming. It's still pushing dirt out of the way. It's still providing food for small animals and shade for my car. And the purpose of that tree is different for the squirrel who eats these things than it is for me who enjoys its shade. It's different for the one who would want to cut it down and make lumber out of it to build a house. We don't always know how the things that we invest in the lives of others is going to be used on their journey. So our passion has to be to see them mature and own that process of maturing for themselves. And the boundaries of how far they can go in anything we would offer them is how far we're willing to go ourselves. To tell ourselves the truth about ourselves, to face things that need to end and die in us and things that need to be born in us again. To be a coach is to be very courageous if you're going to be a good one. To be fearless in the face of the challenges and changes. So I want to encourage you to become the message, to become the concepts, to become the truths, to allow those things to take root in you and to affect you as much as you hope for it to affect others. Whatever that would be, whatever dimension of your investment in a person. And when we get to the end of this, I want to give a couple of suggestions for how I found to do this in my own life. But before I do that, I want to talk about a couple of challenges that can keep us from this. I've already mentioned one, the temptation to perform and to appear to be something that we're not, to be inauthentic. And this is hard. It sounds like I'm condemning or being negative, but it's really hard because for instance, if you're a coach and trying to make a living, you have to get billable hours. You have to promote yourself. You have to be convince people to spend money on coaching that they would maybe don't know if they want to spend it or not. So you have to present things that and present yourself as valuable and helpful. And that's totally okay, necessary, but it's a very narrow path to walk. To being truthful about who you are to yourself and to others, and to describe what benefits you have to offer others. So we have to tell the truth to ourselves. And if we're not telling the truth to ourselves, we will have little truth to offer. So I know it's a challenge. It's a very difficult challenge, how to do this. But I will just encourage you. It is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity to grow and learn. And all of us know people who are pretenders, who put up a show. You may not completely understand it, but you just feel it. If you're in the room with them, if you're in a conversation, you can feel whether they're authentic, whether what they're saying is true. We have this sense about us of what is good, what is true, what is right. And to the extent that we have, that we trust what's going on in somebody else is to the extent that we will let them influence us. So this is true in much of life. To the extent that we allow someone to influence our lives is determined by us. It's not determined by them. Now, if you've been in the Army sometimes, or if you've been in a corporate job where it's very strong and structured and top down and you will do this, you will do this, it seems like you're being influenced from the outside, but ultimately you have to decide whether you accept that influence or not. So that in our coaching relationships, in our parenting, in our friendships, of course we want to see lives better. We have to earn the trust of the person who will then open their boundaries enough to us to receive what we have for them. And this is another major obstacle, another barrier for us being effective coaches, is trust, because trust is not easily earned. It's not easily kept. In fact, actually, I spoke to a coaching group. I don't think it was this one, in Turkey about 5 years ago, on the topic of trust. And it was an awkward conversation for me. I confess it was not easy, because I'm a foreigner. But I had a question at the end of it about a survey that had been done, an international survey. I think you can Google it and still find it. But it was an international survey on interpersonal trust. And Turkey ranked like first or second from the bottom of all nations on interpersonal trust. And it was really confusing to me, because that wasn't my experience with Turks. They were very, as a culture, very warm, very personal, which is usually one of the factors that for a culture that has high trust, because you're very relational, you're very family oriented. So, but Turkey was, they broke the graph. They were high in not trusting, but they were high in relationships. And it didn't make any sense to anyone that was doing the survey. So I asked that group of coaches, why is that? And again, that's another conversation that we can have sometime. But one of them told me of a saying that you have, and actually talking to someone yesterday, they mentioned it again, that you have this saying, don't even trust your own father. And when I heard that, as I thought of that, it's made me very, very sad. Because the home and the father is maybe the primary place we learn to trust, and where we draw our boundaries, how far we'll trust other people, because if this person closest to us is caring for us. So I don't, some of these sayings are, most sayings have some element of truth in them, but they're not always all true for everybody. But that made me sad. But it may be something that you wrestle with as a coach in your culture, building trust with clients, building trust with even colleagues. And it's worth the effort to build the trust, because as you do, you multiply your effectiveness. And as you prove, in English, the term, I don't know how sure this is going to translate. In English, we have the word trust, and we have the term trustworthy. Someone who is worthy of our trust, who has earned our trust. So we want to be trustworthy people, that others will trust us, because to the limits that they trust us is how far they can grow. That's why when we have a relationship where there's unconditional love, the boundaries of our development, there are no boundaries if the love is completely unconditional. And trust is a part of that. So becoming a trustworthy person is, in large part, walking and living in the truths that you are imparting to others. And I know most of us are in this business, in this industry. We spent money and time getting certified, and because some truth, something touched us that changed our lives, and we go, this is incredible, this is amazing, and it would be unethical of me to keep it to myself. So I want to find out how to make this available to others that I love and care about, because this will change the world. This will change lives. And I know that I would bet if we took a survey, that would be one of the first thoughts or emotions that we had when we started the journey to becoming coaches and mentors. That desire to see it go beyond us. So in a sense, I'm calling us back to that first desire, to embody those things, to let them really transform us. As you know, it's not automatic. It's not just going through one session and all of a sudden the idea attracts us, but getting that idea into our soul and getting it habituated so that it becomes natural and normal for us is a much longer journey. And that's why we have coaches to help us on that journey. So that's one obstacle. Perfection, performance, trust, those are, or lack of trust, mistrust, distrust. Those are things that will hinder our effectiveness in this journey. Two more quickly. One is a concept that I don't know if it's a concept that you have in Turkey, but you'll understand it if I describe it. The English phrase for it is a zero-sum game. And some of you may know what that is, a zero-sum game. This is a situation where you have so much money, for instance. And if I give you some money, I will have less. So in order to, if I want to give you money, I have to make a decision to be less. That's okay for money, but we also get in the habit of thinking that that's okay for the good things that we would do. If I give you a compliment out of my resources, then I'm depleted. If I give you something, I've lifted you up, but I've lowered myself. That mentality that's so subtle is called a zero-sum game. There's only so much goodness. There's only so much I have. And if I give too much of it away, then I will cease to exist, or I will cease to be honored. This is very common in a shame and honor culture, which all cultures have this. But I want to, maybe if you hear nothing else today, please hear this. That is a lie. That is not true. You cannot give away things that are true and good and valuable to you. You cannot give away so much of that you have none left. In fact, just the opposite is true. If you choose to take those risks to affirm, to benefit another, to help another, you're not decreasing in terms of your effectiveness. And ultimately, you're not decreasing in terms of your status. You are increasing. It's the principle of that seed. There's something that has to die and be buried and given away, but the result is incredible. And that large tree that now for 150 years is making hundreds of kilograms of seeds that are then multiplying and multiplying, and squirrels are carrying them to other places and planting them and growing other trees. And that's how the universe is made. And it's a lie that if I keep all of these to myself, if I go into the tree and I grab them all and I protect them and I feed my squirrel or whatever I do with them, I don't know why you would do that, but if I keep them for myself, that I'm the richest acorn owner in my neighborhood. Well, I guess if that's what you want to be, but that's not what we want to be. We want the world to be different. We want the world changed. We look at the world and our hearts break. We see the impossibilities. We see broken people making big decisions that hurt other people. We want to see people whole, transformed, and changed. And that happens one seed, one truth, one impartation at a time. So anything we can do to remove the blockage, the obstacles to being effective in imparting those things to other people, it's an ethical decision. It's not right to not do that. It's unethical to hold those things to yourself. But the good part of the story is when you give them away, they multiply. It's in all of creation. There's a lot of things in life that are illogical, that are counterintuitive, that don't make any sense to my selfish, wounded, broken person, but they're still true. We know this. If you've listened to any pop songs or love songs, you know, If you love something, let it go. You know, that's how many times has that lyric been in a song? That I trust you, and we know this is true in our own experience. To truly love is to be completely vulnerable and to give ourselves emotionally, physically to another person. It's very dangerous. It's very scary, especially if we're hurt or wounded or protective or we've had bad experiences. And yet, if we don't do it, we don't experience love. It's that way with money. Have you noticed? Have you ever known someone who is very generous with their finances? And it seems like you think, well, they're generous because they have so much. Of course they could. If I had that much money, I would be generous. Well, do you know? Probably, many times, financial success is something that has been entrusted to people who take very good care of their finances and who don't hoard it to themselves, but they give it. In fact, hardly any religion exists where it's this truth is not taught. Give, bless the poor, help people, don't covet and keep things for yourself. This is not just so that poor people will have money. This is so that the souls of everyone becomes enlarged and healthier, mature, whole. You know, we use in English the word for wholeness and health come from the same root. So there's a lot of counterintuitive truths that we miss because of our brokenness. So one of them is to give of ourselves and to take risk. It's a bigger risk not to do it. And it's a benefit to everyone when we do it. And the worst thing can happen is you get to absorb a little bit of pain. And that's not always bad because there's a lot of pain in the world that needs to be absorbed. And it is in trials, it's in suffering, it's in difficulties where we really do learn. And you are coaches of a different kind, but every athletic coach knows this. They're training someone for an event. They basically inflict pain in their lives by making them run or lift weights or do exercises, and they get exhausted. They're being coached, but they trust that their coach, who was a former all-star, knows what he's doing. And so they submit to his exercise program, and it's painful. It's painful. And over again, I played basketball, and I don't know how many thousands and thousands of times I had to stand on that line and shoot the ball again and again. And sometimes practice wouldn't end until we made 10 in a row, and it took a long time. But we learned how to shoot by repeated efforts. And today I can probably still hit 5 or 6 free throws in a row or out of 10 with my eyes closed, because it's just a habit. It's muscle memory. Well, we do that with everything. There's muscle memory for our responses to other people. And there's muscle memory. We, as you know, all the science now of reprogramming our thoughts, there's things that we think automatically that we sometimes have to address and reprogram what becomes automatic. So I don't want to go any further down that except to say, life is not a zero-sum game. It's not to be clutched. It's to be given to others. What we have, we are responsible to share for the sake of history, for the sake of those who come after us, for the sake of our children, and in my case, my grandchildren. It's for the sake of those trees that will grow from the seeds. And the final obstacle I just want to address, we've already talked about it a little bit, is fear. We're afraid of being known for who we are. If you just knew who I really was, if you knew the thoughts I had, even about you, you would not like me. You know, all these conversations that go on in our heads. there's so much to be afraid of, and rightly so. There's a lot of things to be feared. There's a lot of dangers. There's a lot of psychic, emotional danger in the world. There's a lot of just normal danger of physical harm. And yet we can't let fear define who we are. We can't let it run our lives. And you of course know this from your coaching, when you find this areas of fear and wounding and hurt where people are self-protecting, we know the answer to that is to trust and to love again. And so there is a phrase that is true, but it's another one of these illogical, counterintuitive phrases, and how you deal with fear. And it's this phrase that complete love, unconditional love, perfected love pushes out fear. And it's how we do it. It's how my mother comforted me in my fear when I was a young child in the night, and how you may have received or done this too. All of a sudden, my parent is there with me, and that noise or that light that I saw that made me afraid is no longer there, because all of a sudden I'm surrounded by impenetrable love. So when you encounter fear in others, and when we encounter fear in ourselves, always remember the antidote is a bigger love, a love that will drive that fear out. So I just want to encourage you, before I want to get to a couple of the practical things I had promised to talk about. Just to encourage you to be, as you're coaching, to be self-coaching as well, and to continually enter into relationships with mentors and others that hold you accountable for your own growth, for embodying and applying all the good things you're learning, to have them be part of you. And just determine that that's going to be your life. And that when you get old like me, you're still in the race. You're still running. You're still trying to take hold of those things which are meaningful, and you're not just retiring and going to your beach house and throwing rocks in the water, which is a fun thing to do for a week or two, but it's not purpose for life. So keep running, keep growing, keep learning. You have a great opportunity that others don't have, to be in an association with people with the same mentality, the same passion and commitment. Take advantage of that. Encourage one another and strengthen one another in that. My hope for you is that in your coaching, you will be productive, and that you will be whole, and that out of your investment in yourself and others' investment in you, there will be a health that overflows. You know, if you work with people, you know how draining it is, how depleted we get with our energy, our emotions, even physically. So we constantly have to nourish ourselves so that we have something to offer. If you find yourself in your coaching and you're interacting with people functioning out of a deficit, where, like your bank account, you're just making withdrawals and no deposits, be aware that you're eventually going to have very little to offer other people. So my hope for you is you will find a way, you will find rhythms, you will find disciplines, you will find relationships of encouragement, of grace, of safety, of learning, where you will be replenished. And out of the overflow, then you can offer your gifts, your talents, your counsel, your coaching to other people. And out of the overflow, then it'll be multiplied back, and you won't find yourself in deficit. Now, we do from time to time, but that's my hope for you. That's the motivation. I want to share these things with you. So I told you I had one thing to share. Embody the truth, become the truth. Let it become who you are, so that that's what you're known as. So I want to give you 3 things that I know work to help us live this way. And you already know them. They're very obvious, but they are all, at least 2 of them are a bit counterintuitive. And I want to offer them to you as challenges. And the first one is, again, here's your new, perhaps strange vocabulary word, another Greek word. And I'm trying to see, I still don't see a way to share my screen, which really bugs me. But there's a Greek word. I wish I could share my screen. I'd show you what it says. You can tell me if you can see this. I'm just going to pull up my photos and see. Can you see my screen at all?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. For some reason, I'm using an iPad. When I was using my computer, I could share my screen, but now I can't. So, but the word is metanoia. It's a Greek word. Meta, like metamorphosis, means to change. Noia is the other root. It's where we get knowledge. So it's to change your knowledge or change your thinking. If you Google metanoia, and that's there's lots of good definitions, but it's metanoia, metanoia. It gets used in psychology. So some of you may have taken classes and heard this in some praxis therapy, but it's basically changing the way you think, to think differently. And this is a process that you're involved in with coaching, that you may have other words that you use for that. But metanoia, I love to take a concept that we go, oh yeah, I know that, and to give it a term that it sort of triggers, we have to think about it. Metanoia, to change the way you think. We have to invest in, very purposefully, changing the way we think. Coaching, I'm pretty sure, started growing out of a movement of understanding for how lives are changed. Some of the first coaching officially and the training started taking place in the late 80s and 90s. And it was really in our century, in the 21st century, that it became something as large and international as it is now, more formalized. Just in front of the coaching revolution, there was a revolution in understanding of therapy and how people's lives change. And another picture I had, but I pulled it off my shelf. There's a book that was written. It's called, it's by David Burns, Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy. Let's see. Well, it's not really working. Anyway, this was written in the late 70s and early 80s. And it was studies that they had done at the University of Pennsylvania about what are the most effective strategies and therapies for mental health and drug addiction and depression. Because the counseling and all the pharmaceuticals, they have some effect and they can measure that effect. But they began some other treatments that had to do with how people process their thoughts and how they control their thoughts and focus their thoughts. And the studies, that's an academic book. It's got all the footnotes of all the studies that have been done since then. They discovered that if people can learn practices for changing the way they think and not allowing their thoughts to run wherever they want to go, then a lot of problems get solved. And in fact, the facts are, in the studies, they're more effective than any of the therapeutic philosophies and practices. So out of that realization that we don't need more medicine always, we don't always need more counseling. We need those things. They're very valuable. We need them in the right place. But a lot of self-care, a lot of investment in health at the beginning of how we think, how we change the way we think, metanoia, can go a long ways in producing healthy people. So all of you know this because it's very famous these days, writing affirmations, confessions, things that we say. But I want, because it's so talked about and so known, it's almost like getting an inoculation, a shot for COVID. It makes us, we get a little bit of runny nose and some sickness. We get a mild case of COVID from the shot, but then we avoid the bigger COVID. I don't want you to learn a little bit about changing the way you think and disciplining your mind to inoculate you against getting the full disease. I want you to be fully aware of how important this is. Because wrong thoughts and wrong thought patterns based on things that are not true about you, true about the world, true about others, thinking wrongly, like the zero-sum game of thinking, if I don't have everything, then I'm less. Those thought patterns damage us as people. So how do we purposefully set our thoughts and keep our thoughts in a healthy place? And I'm sure in your toolbox of coaching, you have some of this. This is a big part of the training in the work that I do. But in probably the bottom line, first thing that we all need to practice is the practice of affirmations, the practice of, you might call it personal goal setting, but putting into simple words exactly where you want to go, what you want to be. And I'm talking really simple. Like as I was getting ready for this today, I opened my journal and I wrote what I write every day: tell the truth. It's so easy not to tell the truth, to myself particularly. So I said, tell the truth. And I have probably 50 or 60 sentences that I rehearse and I set in my mind and try to make them the front of my mind and to guide my behavior. So after a while, those become habits of thinking, just like habits of free throw shooting. So we don't have time here, but crafting these statements, you may have heard them called affirmations. In goal setting, in its very best, is crafting these things. You can even, if you spiritually engaged, prayers, crafting them. And there's a lot of principles for doing this well. And I want to give you one that I find most helpful and most difficult. When you craft these sayings, these reprogramming, use present tense verbs. It's very hard. It's easy for me to say, I will tell the truth. It's hard for me to say, I tell the truth. Do you see the difference? I will tell the truth. Yes, I will tell the truth. Yeah, when it happens, I will do it. It's in the future. There's no accountability for the future. But the present, I will tell the truth, brings the reality of that change of the way I think right before me. I will tell the truth. There I go. I tell the truth. I tell the truth. So the verb tense, people live and die based on verb tenses. So careful with the future tense, careful with, in English, I don't know how, I'm sure you have something, the conditional sense. I would do that. I could do that. I might tell the truth. I could tell the truth. Oh, if I'm in that situation, I would tell the truth. Those are all words that are not accountable words. The present tense makes you accountable for what you're thinking and doing. So as you craft these affirmations, as you craft these statements that guide your thinking and for what you want in your life, present tense. So that's the first principle I would encourage you. I'm sure if we took a vote right now, everyone would say, oh yeah, I know that. Do it. Keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. And get a regular rhythm and habit doing it. And again, I'm willing to talk more about that at some other time. That's about you and your self-care. The last two principles that I want to give to you for becoming and multiplying the truth, becoming the truth yourself and multiplying it in others, are going to seem like they have nothing to do with you, but they do. The second one is to become a person who makes a habit of encouraging others, of telling one another, that was incredible. I loved what you did. You helped me so much when you did this. Oh, I saw you help your sister up when she fell. That really was important to me. You are becoming such a strong and mature young man. Speaking the truth and speaking strength into other people, shaping their identity, helping them understand who they are and who they, not making up things, not saying, oh, you're awesome, you're smart, and but, oh, you must have worked really hard to do that. I'm so proud of you. Encouraging one another. You know, you can do this in the line at the grocery store. Somebody there, they're so tired for 10 hours, they're doing nothing but looking at groceries. You know, I really appreciate you. You know, if I know this is a lot of work, but because you do this, I always know I can come here and get the food for my family, and my family's going to sit down and have a great meal, and we're going to interact with each other. And we couldn't do that without you. So thank you. So encouraging others, speaking to them, making that a habit will transform you as a person. As you see the world with gratitude, see the world as opportunities in small ways to do coaching on the fly, free coaching as you drive and as you interact with people in the market or with your family. You don't charge for this, but it changes you. And the last thing is similar to this, but different. So I have to explain how it's different. The last habit, the last practice that I would encourage you to involve yourself in order to transform your world and your own life, is to be a person that purposely speaks blessing. Now, blessing is something we think of maybe with religion or whatever, but speaking blessing, let me give you a definition for what blessing is. And it's similar to encouragement, but not exactly in the way I'm going to define it. Blessing is what you say to someone about their future. I say to Ezra, I see the work you're doing now. I see the hard decisions you're making and the struggles you're making. These things that you're doing now are changing you. You're making great decisions. And I see you as more than a coach in the future. You're gonna have an impact and influence on many people because of the decisions you're making now. And I see you. I see you, Ahmed, I see you as a businessman that is going to succeed. You're very good with numbers. You're very good with people. I see you as a success. And we have the capacity as human beings to speak things into existence, to call them forth. So blessing is truly seeing someone's future, their destiny, and pointing it out to them and saying, yes, you have a future and I see it and you're going to do it. And so many things that I've done have been a consequence of people speaking blessing to me. telling me that I could do it. I remember there was a thing I wanted to do in junior high one time. I think I wanted to run for an office or something, and I did not have the confidence to do that. And so I guess I was looking sad, and my dad said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh, I really want to do this, but I'm afraid." And my dad, he doesn't talk very much. He's an old farmer, and he said, "What? Your last name is Knox. You can do anything." That's all he said. "You can do that. Go do it." And all of a sudden I changed. He told, "Oh yeah, that's who I am." He affected my identity and who I saw myself as a 12-year-old kid. And that confidence that he instilled in me had an impact on a lot of my life. So blessing is speaking to someone truth about who they can be.
Seni duyuyoruz şu anda biz İngilizce kanalında.
That is what I have to share with you, and I don't know if that's what we were wrapping up. Glad to entertain any questions or comments. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, thank you for investing ICF Turkey chapter tonight. And I really enjoyed, and I took lots of notes, and especially about like giving. When we give, we also get, and how love can cover our fear. It was really, really amazing, and multiplying. And how can I be honest to myself daily life, and about free coaching especially. I love it. Thank you, Jayson. And we have some questions, and can I ask them to you?
Yes.
So one of them says, "Then you for the marvelous metaphor in the beginning of the lecture. Could you share another one about relationships between coaches and coachees?"
Okay, say that one more time.
Okay. When you give a metaphor beginning of the lecture, about seed, I think. Mm-hmm. Could you share another one about relationships between coaches and coaches? Do you have any metaphor like that in your mind?
I use a metaphor sometimes of a ladder, like a ladder, like you put against the wall and you climb up, and each step takes you closer to your goal, the place you want to go. Mm-hmm. And it begins with trust. The first step has to be trust. But as you go up the ladder, you have different experiences. And on that ladder will be challenges and choices. Each step is a different choice. Like after trust will get tested on the next step. Will you actually do what your coach says? You have will I shoot that free throw from my coach? Will I do those runs? Will I trust that what they're telling me will really work? So that act of doing what they say, submitting to them, is a decision I have to make, and just to know as a coach that's a place that's not everybody can do that quickly or easily. You have to earn their trust. That's why we hire really good athletes to be coaches, because they are authority. When they speak, we can trust them because they've done it. So you have to become that kind of person. Mm-hmm. But as you go up that ladder, there's several decisions you make. And eventually, you're not moving toward perfection. You are maturing. And you will run into steps where there will be suffering and difficulty and challenge.
Thank you.
And I would encourage, with that analogy, when that's happening, I would make sure that the person knows there are different reasons for suffering. Sometimes we suffer because we're stupid and we do things. We drive a car too fast. We eat too much food. We do dumb things and we suffer for it, an upset stomach, or we get a ticket from the police, or we get put in jail. You know, if you do wrong things, it has consequences and you suffer. That's suffering that you deserve. But as you grow as a person, you will come to places of suffering, real suffering, not because you did something that was wrong, but because you did something that was right. That was the right. You made a hard decision to tell the truth, or to not. It often has to do with being truthful, and then you suffer for it. You don't get the promotion. You don't, and that suffering is real. But we encourage people at that place as a coach. That's good suffering. It's worth it. So maybe that's that.
I think that was really satisfying. Thank you. There's a few more questions I would love to ask you. Jayson, you said you have been working with young leaders also. What kind of difference you observe with these young leaders stepping, perhaps, into their career rather than once already being part of corporate world?
Okay, I didn't hear the last half of that.
Okay.
Sorry.
What kind of difference you observe with these young leaders stepping into their career rather than once already being part of corporate world?
So a question of generational leaders and the changes, I think, if I understand it correctly, the differences in generations. Wow, lots of books have been written about that. I think, and maybe this has always been the case, but I see some healthier people, a lot of strong leaders who lead companies and organizations who go up the ladder are very wounded, broken people. And they have a conception that they know what they're doing, and that's why they've got promoted. And sometimes they perpetuate their brokenness, thinking that they're doing the right thing. But in general, in the younger generations, I'm seeing a higher awareness of their own brokenness, their own needs, and willingness to deal with that. The challenge, I think, is sometimes that paralyzes people. They know their inadequacies, they know their weakness, so they are less confident. Some strong leaders are blind to their own hurts, but they're confident. This is a challenging thing I think, to help these young leaders gain the confidence to do right and act right, and with confidence in who they are, out of maybe some of the self-awareness they have that's much more advanced than their previous generations. Anyway, I see this. That's one thing I see.
That's great. We have another question. It says, I thought it is not something that is taken without trust. I thought this would support you. What do you think? The trust is one of the things you can't get it without giving it away.
Yeah. Yes. Said it well. It's yes. You don't even know what it looks like until you make a decision to offer it.
Another one says, maturing is endless, as you said. Can we say no one becomes perfect?
Yes, that is right.
You said coaches should be courageous. How can we promote ourselves as more courageous people? How can we be more courageous as a coaches?
You know, I think the most important thing is that you don't isolate yourselves. Find a team, find a cadre, a group where in that group you trust, and because people are different and you need people with different perspectives, different strengths, different gifts affecting your life up close. So find a group where there's trust, and as you build that trust and you know each other's lives, you can bless and call people to take those steps of courage. If they know you already, when someone comes to you first time, you don't know them, they don't know you. It takes a while to build that environment of trust and grace and help and safety where you can really be yourself. And I have this saying, if you could, this is very rare, but you have to be intentional about it. It's worth it. We all need each other. There's no such thing as isolation. We are parts of a body that have to have other parts. We have to find these environments of grace. We have to nurture them, and where trust comes. And I have a phrase that describes that. Once you can get it, you and this is part of the training I do. I really enjoy, one of the things I enjoy most. How do you learn to trust the strengths of someone else and then also have your weaknesses protected by others? This trusting and protection. If you can find a group and nurture close comrades, then you can be encouraged, strengthened to take those risks. Risk taking is about courage, and risk taking has to do with your own security. I'll tell you one quick story. When I've taken a lot of risk. They weren't always smart. I seem to have something loose in my brain that I don't assess risk very well. I just do things I shouldn't do with business and within relationships. And I had a counselor one time, why I do this. And I realized the day that there's a symbol for it. The day I was leaving for college, I was getting in my car. I was going to drive 500 kilometers to a university that nobody we knew had ever gone to. It was very, people thought it's dangerous. There's so many crazy people doing drugs. It's so liberal. All my family and friends were very afraid for me going there. So I'm standing in front of my house. My car is loaded, and my father, this is my father who doesn't talk very much. He comes to me and he says, I don't know what you're doing. I didn't go to college, and I don't know what's going to happen when you get there. I have no idea. But you need to know that you've always got a home here, and you can always come back, and you don't have to worry. Whatever happens, you always got a home here. And I'm thinking, okay, Dad, okay, I got to go. Hurry, get home. And then he took off a ring that he had on his finger. It was he was using it kind of as his wedding ring, but his wedding ring had been lost or destroyed in an accident. And it was a ring, and it had a diamond in it, but the diamond was set really low. I'd always seen him wearing it. I'd never seen him taking it off. He took it off and he gave it to me. And he said, here, this is your getting home ring. I don't know what's going to happen to you, but this ring is worth something, a little bit. Take it to a store, a pawn shop, and sell it and get money if you need it to get home, and everything will be okay. I said, okay, Dad, see you later. You know, I'm a stupid 18-year-old kid, but I think back, I was taking risk going to college. I was going to end up taking a lot more risk. And the worst thing that could happen in my life was that things wouldn't work out. If I got in trouble, the worst thing that could happen is I would sell that ring and go home and everything will be okay. So that gave me a level of confidence that I could take those risks, because the worst thing that could happen was not bad. I would go home, and I liked home. So
that's great.
This risk-taking it comes out of being in a safe place. So find safe places in your relationships and in your work groups where you can take risk, and hopefully with a boss in your job. That's the best for corporate work, but it's very rare.
Thank you very much, Jayson. It's been a blessing as you taught us, like you blessed us with this like richness. Thank you very much for sharing. And I want to thank you again to Desire, Kenan Canbaz, Oya Fadıloğlu ve Serdar Samsun. They helped us so we can do this actually. And I want to thank to everybody who joined our webinar and gave their time and invested their self. And I see lots of people saying, thank you, Jayson, thanks a lot. It was really insightful. And in order the words be authentic, be sincere, be yourself, and love what you do. Thank you, Jayson. And everybody says, thank you, thank you. Great presentation, eye-opening and inspiring. Thanks a lot, Jayson.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure. I mean, really, I'm humbled and honored that you would take the time and welcome these things. I truly do hope that it will be a deposit made in your life that will bear a lot of fruit.
Thank you. We couldn't answer all the questions. I'm sorry because of the time's sake. But yeah, I just want to say sorry for that. And we are looking
I'm glad to respond. If there's something you want to send to me, I'm glad to respond.
Okay. I will just take a picture of that and I will send it to you. Okay. And
thank you for your patience and all of my talking.
Oh, it was really great. So do you have anything to say lastly? Then we can say bye.
No, I will say, I'll sum it up with a quote from Steve Jobs about changing the world, because I want you to change the world. He said what he wanted to happen at Apple is what I want to have you put a dent in the universe.
Thank you very much. Herkese tekrar çok teşekkür ederiz. Geldiğiniz için, katıldığınız için zaman. Gelecek hafta tekrar bir ICF buluşmasında bir arada olmak üzere. Kalın.
Bye.
Bye bye.